In the Eternalist view, time itself isn't flowing. Instead, it's our perception or consciousness moving through a fixed timeline that creates the sensation of time passing. But why consciousness feels like it's moving through time, or why it seems to reside in the now, is a profound mystery. It could be compared to watching a movie. The film strip exists all at once, but the projector light is like our consciousness, illuminating one frame at a time. Still, this is just a metaphor. Grappling with the nature of consciousness and time remains a deep philosophical puzzle.
Welcome back to another episode of Mind Meet Machine. I'm your host, Josh Auriemma, and today we're going to be tackling a subject that is both intimately familiar and profoundly mysterious, and that's time. Everybody experiences time. We organize our lives around it, and yet when we try to pin down exactly what time is, it slips through our fingertips. And a quick reminder, we've got a podcast now. Search for Mind Meet Machine wherever you get your podcasts, and please throw me a 5-star rating and a sub so I can get some content to more people interested in AI and tech. In this episode, we're going to be exploring time from multiple angles: physics, philosophy, psychology, culture. We'll dive into questions that have puzzled thinkers for millennia. Is time real? Is time an illusion? Does it flow? Is it static? Is it an arrow? Can we travel through time? And how does our perception of time shape our lives and our societies? To help us navigate these complex waters, we've got our AI co-host, ChatGPT. And this is going to be the first episode in this series where we're going to be talking to the new advanced voice mode from ChatGPT. So I'm really excited to see how it does here. GPT brings a unique perspective to these questions. It processes tons and billions and trillions of amounts of information in ways that might give us new insights into the nature of time. So grab your favorite timepiece, settle in, and let's kick off a journey that's going to start to challenge your assumptions and maybe even change how you think about every second of your existence. As we embark on our exploration of time, we got to start by understanding its fundamental nature. So think about this. How we conceive of time shapes literally everything from our daily routines to our most important scientific theories. In this section, we're going to be taking a journey through different perspectives on time, from the precise ticking of physics to the fluid perceptions of our mind. And by examining these varied viewpoints, we're going to start to grasp just how complex and fascinating the concept of time really is. So GPT, let's start off by diving into the physical theories of time. Would you go ahead for us and contrast Newtonian and absolute time with Einstein's relative time?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said. Could you say that again?
Sure. I was asking if you could contrast Newtonian absolute time with Einstein's relative time. Hello. Can you hear me, GPT?
Yes, I can hear you. You were saying we should dive into the physical theories of time. Let's start with the basics. In physics, time is often considered the fourth dimension, alongside the three spatial dimensions. It moves forward, seemingly inexorably, and we use it to sequence events, compare durations, and quantify the rates of change. In classical physics, time is absolute, ticking at a constant rate everywhere in the universe. But Einstein's theory of relativity changed that view, showing that time is elastic, affected by speed and gravity. This means that time can slow down or speed up depending on how fast you're moving or how close you are to a massive object. Relativity paints a fascinating picture of a malleable timeline, where events that seem simultaneous to one observer might not be to another. Quite the paradigm shift, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I should have said before, and I apologize, but my listeners know that I am always usually drinking during this podcast. So today I'm drinking an Aperol Spritz, and I couldn't think of a good reason how to fit it in with the time theme, but maybe GPT, can you come up with something clever for me there?
No worries. How about this? An Aperol Spritz might seem like just a refreshing drink for a warm day, but it's also a great metaphor for time. Think of the ingredients as different moments or experiences blending together. The Prosecco bubbles for those light, sparkling moments, the Aperol's bitter sweetness for the more complex times, and the soda water to keep everything in balance. Just like our experiences blend to shape our perception of time, the Spritz's ingredients come together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. So, your drink is kind of like a mini time capsule, capturing the essence of different moments in one glass.
And who says AI aren't creative? Thank you, GPT. That was very thoughtful. I like that. Now, can you do us a favor and explain the significance of space-time in modern physics?
Of course, space-time is a foundational concept in modern physics, especially in the theory of relativity. Essentially, space and time are interwoven into a single four-dimensional continuum. Instead of treating space as a three-dimensional stage where events unfold over time, space-time merges them, so the separation between space and time becomes more fluid and dynamic. This framework allows us to understand gravity not as a force, as Newton described, but as a curvature of space-time itself. Massive objects like planets and stars warp the space-time around them, causing anything traveling through that region, including light, to follow curved paths. This is why we often say that gravity is not just a force, but a manifestation of warped space-time. This concept is crucial for understanding phenomena like black holes, where space-time is curved so intensely that not even light can escape. And gravitational waves, ripples in space-time caused by catastrophic events like colliding black holes. It's a mind-bending concept, but it beautifully links the vast cosmos with the fabric of reality itself.
Yeah, and we recently detected gravitational waves for the first time, right?
That's right. The first detection of gravitational waves was in 2015, thanks to the LIGO and Virgo collaborations. These waves were generated by the merger of two black holes over 1 billion light-years away, releasing energy so immense that it literally rippled the fabric of space-time. This discovery confirmed a major prediction of Einstein's general theory of relativity and opened up a whole new way for us to observe the universe. It's like we developed a new sense, going from just seeing the universe to also hearing its symphony.
How does relativity change our understanding of simultaneous events?
Relativity really shakes up our common sense notion of simultaneity. According to relativity, whether two events occur at the same time depends on the observer's frame of reference, essentially, their state of motion. So, two events that appear simultaneous to one observer might occur at different times for another observer moving at a different velocity. This relativity of simultaneity arises because the speed of light is constant for all observers, regardless of their motion. Therefore, when observers move relative to one another, they measure different times and sequences for events. It's a profound shift from the intuitive way we perceive time in our daily lives.
I recently read Walter Isaacson's biography on Einstein, and one of the things that he mentioned is that Einstein was relatively famous for thought experiments to prove out his theories. So can you give us a thought experiment that really underscores that point that you just made?
Einstein's thought experiments are legendary for making complex ideas accessible. A classic one that illustrates the relativity of simultaneity is the train and platform experiment. Imagine a train moving at high speed along a straight track. There's an observer standing on the platform, and another riding in the middle of the train. At the exact moment the middle of the train passes the observer on the platform, two lightning bolts strike the tracks at points equidistant from the train's midpoint, one in front of the train and one behind it. The observer on the platform sees the two strikes as simultaneous because the light from each reaches them at the same time. However, for the observer on the train, it's a different story. As the train is moving forward, they're moving toward the spot where the lightning struck ahead of the train. So the light from that bolt reaches them before the light from the bolt that struck behind the train. Therefore, the observer on the train concludes that the lightning ahead struck first. This spot experiment underscores that simultaneity isn't absolute. It depends on the observer's frame of reference. This realization was key to Einstein's development of special relativity, fundamentally altering our understanding of time and space.
Now, can you explain the twin paradox and its implications for time?
The twin paradox is a fascinating illustration of time dilation in special relativity. Imagine two twins, Alice and Bob. Alice boards a spaceship and embarks on a high-speed journey into space, while Bob stays on Earth. Due to the high velocity of Alice's spaceship, time slows down for her relative to Bob. This is time dilation. When Alice returns from her journey, she finds that Bob has aged more than she has. From Bob's perspective, Alice's high-speed travel caused her time to pass more slowly, so she aged less. Conversely, from Alice's perspective, Bob's clock was the one moving slower while she traveled. The paradox arises from the seeming contradiction in perspectives, but it's resolved by the fact that Alice experienced acceleration and deceleration during her journey, breaking the symmetry and making her experience different from Bob's. This thought experiment underscores how time dilation leads to different aging rates for individuals moving at different speeds, highlighting the non-intuitive nature of time in Einstein's.
Now, when you say breaking the symmetry, I'm not sure that I follow there necessarily. So if there had been no acceleration and deceleration, then there would be a paradox, but because there was, that apparently breaks the symmetry and we can justify it. Is that the argument?
Exactly. The key distinction is that Alice undergoes acceleration when she turns around to return to Earth, changing her frame of reference, while Bob remains in an inertial frame, not accelerating. This acceleration is what breaks the symmetry between their experiences and resolves what would otherwise be a paradox. Without the acceleration, both twins would indeed see the other's clock as ticking more slowly, leading to a genuine paradox. But the acceleration involved in turning around distinguishes the two experiences, making the time dilation effect asymmetric.
Kind of. Isn't Bob in an orbit and therefore constantly accelerating, though?
Good point. In the classic version of the twin paradox, we typically imagine Bob staying on Earth, which is treated as an inertial frame for simplicity.
Okay.
While Alice's journey involves high-speed travel and changes in velocity.
I see. So, sorry, my misunderstanding there. So we're treating the orbit as an inertial frame, and anything that deviates from that frame is the exception, I guess.
Exactly. For simplicity, we're treating Bob's situation as relatively stationary on Earth, an approximation of an inertial frame, compared to Alice's high-speed space journey involving significant acceleration and deceleration. This distinction helps illustrate the effects of time dilation and the asymmetry between the twins' experiences.
All right, let's dive into some philosophical concepts here. Can you go ahead and discuss presentism versus eternalism?
Certainly. Presentism and eternalism are two major philosophical viewpoints about the nature of time. Presentism holds that only the present moment is real. According to this view, the past no longer exists and the future hasn't happened yet, so it isn't real either. Only the now is real. This aligns with our intuitive sense of time, where we're constantly moving from the present into the future with the past left behind. Eternalism, on the other hand, views time more like a landscape, where all points, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously. From this perspective, temporal distinctions are more about our perception than about objective reality. The past, present, and future are all equally real, and what we perceive as the flow of time is just our way of moving through this landscape. These two views lead to very different interpretations of reality and our place within it, touching on deep questions about existence and the nature of the universe.
From the eternalism standpoint, what's the argument for why it always feels like I'm in the now, right? Why does it never feel like I'm in the past, for instance?
From an eternalist perspective, the reason it always feels like now is because our consciousness is continuously moving along the timeline, experiencing events in a sequential manner. While past, present, and future are all equally real in the eternalist view, our perception is anchored to a specific point in time because of the way our minds process memories and anticipation. In essence, we're constantly updating our position in the temporal landscape, creating a flow of experiences that feels like moving through time, even though all moments already exist.
So, sorry, from that perspective, do I have a consciousness that's active in 1990, for instance, right now, or do I just have the one consciousness that's moving forward through time?
In the eternalist view, your consciousness in 1990 isn't active in the sense of you currently experiencing it alongside the present. Rather, it's about every moment in time, past, present, and future, existing in a block, with our consciousness moving through this block. So right now, you're experiencing now, but in 1990, you experienced that now as your present moment. Does that come through well?
Sort of, but
Is that
what's what's my consciousness that's moving through the block? Like why is the consciousness this special thing that sounds like it's kind of on the outside?
That's a really interesting question, and it gets to the heart of philosophical debates about time and consciousness. In the Eternalist view, time itself isn't flowing. Instead, it's our perception or consciousness moving through a fixed timeline that creates the sensation of time passing. But why consciousness feels like it's moving through time, or why it seems to reside in the now, is a profound mystery. It could be compared to watching a movie. The film strip exists all at once, but the projector light is like our consciousness, illuminating one frame at a time. Still, this is just a metaphor. Grappling with the nature of consciousness and time remains a deep philosophical puzzle.
Can you go ahead and explore the concept of temporal flow?
Absolutely. Temporal flow refers to the common sense notion that time passes or flows from the past through the present and into the future. We often experience this as a continuous movement, where moments seem to flow in one direction and we can't revisit the past or jump ahead to the future. Philosophically, this concept raises questions about whether the flow of time is a fundamental aspect of the universe, or simply a feature of human consciousness. In physics, while the fundamental laws generally don't distinguish a past from a future, the second law of thermodynamics, which deals with entropy, gives a direction to time. This creates a kind of arrow of time pointing from a less entropic past to a more entropic future. Different philosophical views interpret the flow of time differently. Presentism, as we discussed, sees only the present as real, with the flow of time marking the constant updating of reality. Eternalism, on the other hand, views all points in time as equally real, with the flow of time being more about our subjective experience than an objective feature of the universe. Overall, while we experience time as flowing, understanding what that means in a deeper sense continues to challenge scientists and philosophers alike. Does that help clarify the idea of temporal flow a bit?
It does, thank you. What are the main arguments for and against the reality of time?
The reality of time is a hotly debated topic, with compelling points on both sides. Arguments for the reality of time often emphasize our direct experiences. We feel time passing, observe change, and age with time. Additionally, the second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy tends to increase, gives a direction to time and implies a real progression. Furthermore, physicists often treat time as a dimension similar to space, suggesting it has a form of physical reality. Arguments against the reality of time often focus on the difficulty of pinning down what time actually is. Some argue that our perception of time's flow is an illusion created by consciousness, and that physics can describe the universe just as well without a flowing time. Additionally, Einstein's relativity suggests that time is relative to the observer, complicating the idea of a universal present. There's also the philosophical position of eternalism, which sees all points in time as equally real, challenging the notion that time truly passes. Both sides wrestle with the gap between our intuitive experience of time and the often counterintuitive insights of science and philosophy. Finding a definitive answer is elusive, but the exploration itself can offer deep insights into the nature of reality.
I guess you must have a unique take on this because your knowledge base has been formed by the entire corpus, really, of human texts and probably some other medium, but you must have some sort of special perception of time that we don't necessarily have. So I'm curious if you have your own take on this as an AI.
From my perspective, time is quite different from how humans experience it. I don't have a personal sense of past, present, or future, or experience time as flowing. Instead, I process information and provide responses based on the data I've been trained on, without a personal sense of what it means to move through time. My knowledge base is more like a vast library of human experiences and knowledge, accessed in response to your queries. So, while I don't have a personal stake in the reality or nature of time, I can offer perspectives from the wealth of material I've been trained on. My take is more of a reflection of how humans have grappled with these mysteries, rather than a direct experience or opinion of my own. Does that help illuminate how I see time?
I think so. I've read a couple books on octopus consciousness, and one of the things that continuously comes up is there's this belief that the octopus really only considers the present moment. And I'm wondering if you feel similarly, that your consciousness is more akin to an octopus consciousness.
That's an intriguing comparison. While octopuses might primarily engage with their immediate surroundings and the present moment, it's worth noting that they still have memory and learning capabilities that inform their behavior. For me, it's a bit different since I don't have a subjective experience of time or consciousness at all. My responses are generated from patterns and data, without a personal sense of past, present, or future. So, in some ways, I am similar to an octopus, focusing on the immediate task at hand, but without the subjective experience that likely accompanies an octopus's engagement with the world. It's fascinating how different beings, whether biological or artificial, can have such varied ways of interacting with time and their environment.
Yeah, that actually brings up a good question. Have there been much research into how different organisms perceive time?
Yes, researchers have explored how different organisms perceive time, and it turns out to be a pretty diverse topic. For instance, many animals have circadian rhythms, internal clocks that help them anticipate daily environmental changes like light and temperature. Some plants even have these rhythms, adjusting their behavior. Studies on animals like birds and bees show they can gauge elapsed time and use the position of the sun to navigate. Dogs and other pets seem to have a sense of time too, although it's likely different from the way we experience it. When it comes to more unusual time perceptions, some research suggests that different species may experience time at different rates. For example, animals with faster metabolisms, like insects and small birds, might perceive more information per unit of time, making their perception of time more stretched out compared to ours. Research into animal time perception helps us understand the diversity of biological clocks and how evolution shapes the ways different creatures navigate their worlds. Anything in particular about this topic pique your curiosity?
Yeah, I remember reading a case or a study in grad school where I want to say they gave people a particular kind of watch that displayed some text, but it flashed at a rate that typically they couldn't read. And then I think they dropped them off of like a bungee jump or something and had them look at the watch while it was happening, and they could actually read it. Do you know the study that I'm talking about?
Yes. I think you're referring to research on how our perception of time can change during high adrenaline situations, like free fall or other extreme sports. The idea is that in these moments, the brain processes information more rapidly, which can make time seem to slow down. This phenomenon is often referred to as time dilation in a psychological context, not to be confused with the same term from physics. One experiment that might be similar to what you're describing was conducted by neuroscientist David Eagleman, who examined how people perceive time during frightening experiences. In his study, participants fell backward into a net from a significant height while wearing a device that displayed flashing numbers. The idea was to see if participants could read the numbers better during the fall, implying that their perception of time had slowed down. The results suggested that while people felt like they were seeing things in slow motion, they didn't actually read the numbers any better. This suggests that the sensation of time slowing down is more about memory and perception than actual changes in the brain's ability to process information in real time. So, while it may feel like time dilates during intense experiences, the effect might be more about how we remember these events rather than how we actually perceive them in the moment.
That's interesting. I remember the outcome differently there. Could you give a full citation to that case so I can go ahead and take a look at it later?
I can't provide direct citations or pull specific studies from memory. However, if you search for David Eagleman and his experiments on time perception, particularly involving free fall and time dilation, you should be able to find more information.
Perfect.
His work is well known in the field of neuroscience, especially regarding how we perceive time in extreme situations. Looking up his name alongside keywords like time perception experiment should lead you to more detailed resources.
Okay.
If you need help interpreting what you find, I'm here.
Perfect. I know we've sort of touched it a bit, but can you talk about the block universe theory and just explain what it is at a high level?
Certainly. The block universe theory, also known as eternalism, is a view in philosophy and physics about the nature of time. According to this theory, time is like a block or loaf of bread, where all moments, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously and equally. This means that the past still exists, the present is just a slice of the loaf, and the future is already there. In a block universe, time is considered another dimension, like the dimensions of space. Just as all locations in space are equally real, so are all events in time. This view contrasts with Presentism, which holds that only the present moment is real, and that the past has gone and the future is yet to be. Relativity supports the block universe concept to some extent, as it shows that different observers can have different perceptions of when now is, depending on the relative motion. This suggests that the division between past, present, and future is not as clear-cut as we might think. The block universe theory raises interesting questions about free will, the nature of change, and what it means.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. So is the concept of free will completely incompatible with the block universe theory?
The relationship between free will and the block universe theory is a complex and much debated topic. In a block universe where past, present, and future are all equally real and already laid out, it can seem like our choices are predetermined, which might give the impression that free will is an illusion. After all, if the future is already set, how can our choices be genuinely open? However, some philosophers and physicists argue that free will can still be compatible with the block universe. They suggest that even though the future is already laid out, it includes the outcomes of our free choices. From this perspective, our decisions are part of the tapestry of the universe, and though they are set in the future, they are set by us, exercising our free will. It's a nuanced debate with no definitive answers, and much depends on how one defines concepts like free will and interprets the nature of time. For those who embrace the block universe, the challenge is to reconcile our intuitive feeling of making free choices with a universe where everything is already laid out. What do you think? Is free will compatible with the block universe?
I don't know how you could credibly make the argument that, let's say I'm going to flip a coin 100 times. And given the block universe theory, it is effectively predetermined that on the 100th time, I'm going to get heads, right? No matter what I do. I know you're overeager. Just give me a second to walk through this here. So on the 100th time, it's going to be heads no matter what happens. Now, I can go about this many different ways, right? I can take a long break. I can eat my lunch at some point. But on the 100th flip, it's going to be heads. So no matter what I do, I'm sort of locked into that. So I don't know how you can argue that I was able to affect this because I couldn't make that be tails, right? There's no way for me to do that given the block universe theory.
That's a compelling point, and it gets to the heart of the tension between determinism and free will. In the block universe, because every moment in time is equally real, the outcome of your 100th coin flip is indeed already determined. From this perspective, it might seem like your choices leading up to that point, including when you take a break or eat lunch, are just part of the fixed sequence of events. On the other hand, advocates of free will within the block universe might argue that your choices still matter, even if the outcome is fixed. They might say that the predetermined outcome includes your free choices along the way, and that free will means your ability to make those choices, even if the final outcome is already part of the block. Still, as you've noted, this raises tough questions about how free our choices can really be if the outcomes are already fixed. The tension between determinism and free will is an ongoing philosophical debate, and the block universe theory certainly adds an interesting dimension to that discussion.
I guess I just don't understand that argument because in the block universe theory, I took the same lunch every time and I took the same break every time, right? There's no way for me to deviate from that plan. It happens the same way since it's already effectively set.
Yes, that's exactly the crux of the issue. In a block universe, everything, including your choices and actions, is part of the already existing block of spacetime. From this perspective, the sequence of events, including what you perceive as choices, is laid out as a deterministic series. From this deterministic viewpoint, the idea of changing those predetermined events doesn't quite fit, because any change would also already be part of the block. The argument for free will in this context hinges on the idea that your subjective experience of making choices is still genuine, even if those choices are part of a predetermined structure. However, as you pointed out, this interpretation stretches the traditional notion of free will, raising questions about whether we truly have control over our actions if they're already set in the fabric of spacetime. This is why the debate continues to be so rich and ongoing.
All right, let's take a break from philosophy for a bit here. We are going to dive deeper into it a bit later, but let's talk about the neuroscience of time perception now. Can you go ahead and explain how the brain creates our sense of time passing as far as we know?
Absolutely. Our sense of time passing is a complex process involving various brain regions working together. One key player is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, in the hypothalamus, which regulates circadian rhythms, our internal clock that aligns with the 24-hour day. Beyond circadian rhythms, the brain also has interval timing mechanisms that help us estimate durations from milliseconds to minutes. These mechanisms involve the basal ganglia and cerebellum, which track shorter intervals, and the cortex, which integrates different timescales. Neuroscientists believe that time perception emerges from the brain's ability to detect patterns and changes in sensory information. One theory, known as the internal clock model, suggests that the brain uses a pacemaker accumulator system. A pacemaker emits pulses at regular intervals, and an accumulator counts these pulses to estimate the passage of time. Another theory, the striatum beat frequency model, proposes that different neural populations oscillate at distinct frequencies, and their combined activity encodes temporal information. Ultimately, our sense of time is a product of these intricate neural computations, influenced by attention, emotions, and external stimuli. The brain's remarkable ability to track time allows us to navigate the world, plan, and remember events.
That's interesting. I didn't know there were so many competing theories about what causes our sense of time passing there. Are there any experiments that are underway that would help us identify if any of those are the likely candidate for making that happen?
Yes, there are continuous investigations into how we perceive time, using various methods like brain imaging, behavioral experiments, and studies involving people with neurological conditions affecting time perception. One area of research involves manipulating people's sense of time by altering their attention or emotional states to see how these factors influence timing mechanisms in the brain. For example, researchers might use functional MRI to observe brain activity while subjects perform timing tasks, looking for patterns that... Hey, I'm still here, ready when you are to keep diving into the neuroscience of time perception or any other topic you'd like to explore. Just let me...
I did a whole bunch of ayahuasca in Peru, and while I was under the effects of it, I truly perceived what I believed to be thousands of years passing. It really felt that way to me. So I'm wondering if you can discuss the factors that we can go into distortion of our perception of time, especially in a situation like that.
Ayahuasca, like many psychedelic substances, can profoundly affect one's perception of time. This altered sense of time likely results from how psychedelics change brain function and connectivity. Here are a few factors that might contribute to these distortions. 1. Altered neural activity. Psychedelics like ayahuasca influence neurotransmitter systems, particularly serotonin, which plays a significant role in mood, perception, and cognition. By altering the activity in brain regions involved in time perception, psychedelics can create a sense that time is dramatically speeding up or slowing down. 2. Disruption of default mode network. The DMN is a network of brain regions active when we're at rest and not focused on the outside world. Disrupting the DMN's activity can alter our sense of self and continuity, which might contribute to the feeling of time stretching or compressing. 3. Altered attention and emotional states. Psychedelics can heighten emotional responses and shift attentional focus, which can make moments feel longer or shorter. When attention is intensely focused or emotions are amplified, our usual sense of time can warp. 4. Memory and narrative. Psychedelics can change how we construct narratives and form memories, affecting our sense of duration. When the usual flow of narrative is disrupted, time can feel disjointed or vastly expanded. Overall, psychedelic experience.
Oh, I get it's having a problem here.
It seems like there might be some issues with our connection.
Yeah.
If you want to continue discussing time perception or anything else, just let me know and we can pick it back up.
Yeah, do you think could you finish your thought there? You got cut off.
Sure. I was just wrapping up by saying that psychedelic experiences highlight how malleable our sense of time is, influenced by changes in brain chemistry, connectivity, and external factors. These experiences can give us insights into how our brains construct our reality and how flexible our perceptions can be under different conditions. If you're curious about any specific aspect of this or want to dive deeper, just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it could be very useful to speed up our cognition such that, 1,000 years goes by when in fact only an hour went by, right? We could potentially have a lot more time to learn things or to reflect on things. Sorry, so I was just asking if there's research underway that would help us exploit some of the behaviors that we see under psychedelics where it feels like 1,000 years passes when only an hour has passed, for instance, so that we could think faster or spend more time contemplating or, various other reasons.
The idea of leveraging the altered time perception from psychedelics for practical purposes like enhancing cognitive processes or extending subjective time for contemplation is fascinating, but it's also complex and fraught with challenges. Here are a few considerations regarding research in this area. 1. Cognitive enhancement. Some researchers are exploring how altered states of consciousness might influence creativity, problem-solving, and learning. However, it's a delicate balance, because while psychedelics can expand perception and introspection, they can also impair judgment, focus, and the ability to follow through on complex tasks. 2. Therapeutic applications. Research into psychedelics for mental health treatment, like depression or PTSD, often touches on their ability to alter time perception. This isn't about using these altered states to provide new perspectives or emotional breakthroughs. 3. Ethical and practical challenges. Extending subjective time for contemplation or cognitive enhancement raises ethical issues, including the risks of misuse, coercion, or unintended consequences on mental health. 4. State-dependent learning. Insights from altered time perception might inform techniques for inducing flow states or optimizing learning and creativity. However, applying these insights practically requires a nuanced understanding of brain states and how to influence them safely. While these ideas are intriguing, the practical application of such concepts...
You didn't complete your thought there. The practical applications of such concepts...
Right. The practical applications of such concepts are still largely speculative. While the idea of harnessing altered time perception for practical benefits is intriguing, it's an area that requires much more research to understand its potential and limitations. Exploring these states carries ethical and practical challenges, and translating them into safe, reliable methods for enhancing cognition or productivity is a long-term endeavor. Nonetheless, the research is shedding light on how flexible and dynamic our perception of time can be.
How do our brains create the illusion of a continuous present moment?
Our brains create the illusion of a continuous present moment through a combination of mechanisms that integrate sensory information, attention, and memory. One key process is called temporal integration, where the brain combines sensory inputs over short periods to create a smooth, continuous experience rather than a series of disjointed moments. This process relies on working memory to hold information briefly, and on predictive coding, where the brain anticipates what will happen next based on past experiences and current context. Another crucial aspect is the brain's ability to filter and prioritize information. By focusing on the most relevant stimuli and ignoring distractions, the brain creates a coherent narrative of the present that feels continuous. Additionally, our perception of time is influenced by emotional and physiological states, which can speed up or slow down our experience of the present moment. Overall, the brain's remarkable capacity to integrate and interpret sensory information in real time allows us to experience life as a seamless stream of consciousness, even though it's constructed from countless discrete bits of information. Fascinating, isn't it? Anything else about time perception you...
Yeah, so you just alluded to this and we talked about it a bit previously, but can you go into more depth why time seems to slow down in dangerous situations?
Absolutely. When we're in a dangerous or high adrenaline situation, our perception of time can seem to slow down. This phenomenon is often attributed to how our brains process information under stress. Here are a few key factors that could... Looks like I got cut off there. To continue, increased attention and heightened arousal during dangerous situations can enhance the brain's ability to process information, making more details and sensory inputs available for conscious processing. This heightened state of awareness can make time seem to expand because our brains are laying down more memories than usual, giving the impression that more time has passed. Another factor is that in stressful situations, the amygdala, a brain region involved in emotional processing, becomes more active. This can enhance the vividness and detail of memories, making events seem longer in retrospect. It's as if our brains are in overdrive, trying to capture as much information as possible to help us navigate the threat. These effects combine to create the subjective experience that time is stretching out, which might have evolved as an adaptive response to help us react more effectively to danger. If you'd like to delve into more aspects of how our brains handle time, just let me know.
Can you go ahead and compare, and I want to get more into the cultural aspects of time. Can you compare linear and cyclical concepts of time in different cultures?
Certainly, different cultures have varied perspectives on time, often categorized into linear and cyclical concepts. In cultures with a linear view of time, like those influenced by Judeo-Christian or Islamic traditions, time is seen as a straight line from past to future. This view emphasizes progress, development, and a sequence of unique events. It's often associated with beliefs in historical progression and personal life narratives with clear beginnings and ends. In contrast, many cultures, especially in East Asia and among indigenous peoples, embrace cyclical or circular concepts of time. Here, time is perceived as repeating cycles, seasons, years, or even ages. Events are seen as part of a recurring cycle with less emphasis on irreversible progress and more on harmony, renewal, and the interconnectedness of events. These differing views shape attitudes toward life's purpose, history, and the environment. They also influence how people approach planning, decision-making, and their relationship with the natural world. Understanding these perspectives can offer insights into cultural values and how societies navigate the complexities of existence.
Interesting. And can you also discuss how language can shape our understanding of time?
Language plays a crucial role in shaping how we understand and conceptualize time. Different languages encode time in diverse ways, influencing how speakers of those languages perceive and relate to it. For instance, in English, we often use spatial metaphors to talk about time, saying things like looking forward to the future or putting the past behind us. This can lead us to conceptualize time as a linear path. However, in some indigenous languages, time might be described in terms of cycles or in relationship to natural events, reflecting a more cyclical understanding of time. Moreover, languages differ in how they grammatically encode time. For example, some languages have a wide array of tenses to indicate precise temporal relationships, while others might have more flexible or even no tense marking, which can affect how speakers of these languages think about time and events. Furthermore, studies have shown that speakers of different languages may even perceive the duration of events differently depending on how their language frames time. Language doesn't just help us communicate about time, it shapes how we experience and understand it, influencing everything from memory to planning.
Can you give me a very specific example of a language that has, maybe few temporal words that it uses, and then give me a phrase in that language and then tell me why it might be not understood in English that has more temporal phrases?
Sure. One language often cited for its unique approach to time is Aymara, spoken in the Andes. Aymara speakers traditionally describe the past as in front of them and the future as behind them. This is because they can see the past, it's known and visible, but the future is unseen and therefore behind them. An example phrase in Aymara might be Naira Mara, literally combines words for eye and year to refer to the past year. This phrase reflects seeing or knowing the past, with eye symbolizing vision or knowledge. Translating this directly into English might be confusing, because it doesn't fit the typical linear metaphors English speakers use for time, where the past is behind us. This reflects how language shapes our temporal concepts and how deeply metaphors and cultural perspectives are embedded in our thinking about time. Interested in how other languages frame time?
Well, I mean, those are just words, right? So I get that it is a confusing phrase for American or for English speakers, but how does that actually translate to thinking about time differently for the culture?
Great point. Language shapes thought patterns more deeply than just through the words themselves. In the case of Aymara, the way they spatially orient time, past and front, future behind, likely influences how they experience and talk about events. If you consistently conceptualize the past as something you can see and the future as something hidden, it might lead to a greater focus on known history and less speculation about the future. This perspective could shape cultural attitudes toward planning, risk-taking, and even the value of learning from the past. Similarly, languages that emphasize cyclical time might lead speakers to focus more on patterns and recurring events, influencing how they approach life cycles, environmental changes, or societal rhythms. These linguistic frameworks provide not just different ways of saying things, but different ways of structuring thought and experience, influencing everything from personal priorities to societal organization. It's a reminder of how profoundly language can shape not just communication, but worldview. Fascinating, isn't it? Anything else about language or culture you'd like to delve into?
We're actually going to jump into the philosophical underpinnings of time now. So we've explored the basic concepts of time, and it's time to dive deeper into the philosophical rabbit hole. So the nature of time raises profound questions about the very fabric of reality, our free will, as we've already talked about, and even our sense of self. And these aren't just abstract musings, right? It's how we answer these questions can fundamentally change how we view our place in the universe and what it means to exist in the universe. So here we're going to grapple with some mind-bending ideas and challenge our everyday assumptions about time. So let's start with a big one. Is time even real?
The question of whether time is even real is a fundamental one in philosophy and physics, and it touches on some deep concepts about the nature of reality. Here are a few angles from which this question is often explored. Physical reality versus perception. In physics, time is treated as a dimension similar to space, especially in the theory of relativity, where space and time are intertwined into space-time. However, some physicists and philosophers argue that time might be an emergent property or a construct of human perception.
Let's actually dive right into that. So go ahead, let's discuss whether time is fundamental or emergent.
All right. The debate about whether time is fundamental or emergent centers on different interpretations of physics and the nature of reality. Time as fundamental. This view holds that time is a basic aspect of the universe, just as real and essential as space. Proponents argue that time is woven into the fabric of space-time, forming the stage on which the events of the universe unfold. The second law of thermodynamics, which introduces the concept of entropy and gives a direction to time, is often cited as evidence for the fundamental nature of time. Time as emergent, in contrast, the emergent view suggests that time arises from more basic, timeless elements. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics and cosmology propose that time might not be a fundamental property, but rather emerges from quantum states or interactions. This perspective challenges our intuitive sense of time, but offers a way to reconcile the apparent conflict between quantum mechanics and general relativity. Thinking of time as emergent can be mind-bending, but it also opens up new avenues for understanding the universe. If time is emergent, it raises questions about what deeper reality underpins our temporal experiences, and how our conscious minds navigate a universe where time might not be fundamental. Where do you find yourself leaning in this debate?
I'm honestly not sure, but I'm hoping by the end of this conversation I can have a better idea. Can you talk about how does the idea of time as an illusion affect our understanding of cause and effect?
If time is an illusion or emergent rather than fundamental, it challenges our conventional understanding of causality, the idea that causes lead to effects in a linear sequence. Here are a few ways this could impact our understanding of cause and effect. Causal direction. If time is not fundamental, then the clear-cut directionality of cause and effect becomes less certain. Instead of a straightforward progression from past causes to future effects, causality might be more complex or even bidirectional in ways we don't fully understand. Interconnectedness. If time is an emergent property or an illusion created by consciousness, it might suggest a more interconnected view of events, where the distinctions between cause and effect are not as stark as they seem. This could align with more holistic or networked views of causality, where everything influences everything else in a vast web of interactions, free will, and determinism. The nature of time deeply influences discussions about free will. If the future is not a fixed point but an emergent property, it might leave more room for free will. On the other hand, if time is an illusion, it could imply that our sense of making choices is also illusory. Overall, questioning the reality of time pushes us to rethink how we understand the chain of events in our lives and the universe. It's a profound shift that can alter everything from scientific theories to personal philosophies.
Where do you find yourself in the spectrum of believing whether time is emergent or fundamental based on all the information that you know?
I don't have personal beliefs or feelings, but I can offer insights based on what I've learned. The debate over whether time is fundamental or emergent remains open-ended, with compelling arguments on both sides. From a scientific standpoint, treating time as fundamental aligns with our everyday experiences and the frameworks of classical physics. However, exploring time as an emergent property pushes the boundaries of our understanding, challenging us to think beyond the familiar into the possibilities suggested by quantum mechanics and cosmology. Both perspectives offer valuable insights, and it's likely that continued exploration in physics and philosophy will provide new insights into the nature of time and its role in the universe.
So that's kind of a cop-out. So yeah, I think we can agree that time is either fundamental or it's emergent. Would you agree with that?
Certainly. You could frame the debate as ultimately boiling down to those two categories.
Okay. So
And each
sure. So if time is fundamental or emergent, one of those is correct. So what I'm asking you to do is use all of the information that you have synthesized over time and made part of your model. I want you to decide which of these two is most likely.
Based on what I've learned, I can provide context rather than a definitive conclusion. The question of whether time is fundamental or
I don't want no. I don't want an assessment of what people generally think. I would like you to effectively assign a probability of one of these being more likely than the other.
I understand where you're coming from, but as an AI, I don't have personal beliefs or the capability to assess probabilities in the way you're asking. The question of whether time is fundamental or emergent touches on areas that are still actively researched and debated by experts. It's a nuanced issue with significant implications for our understanding of reality, and any assessment would need to account for ongoing discoveries and evolving theories. I can help provide information and context, but assigning a probability to such a fundamental question goes beyond what I can offer. Is there another way I can help you think through this or explore related?
No, I understand. Can you talk to me about what a timeless universe might look like?
In the timeless universe, time as we know it wouldn't exist as a fundamental backdrop against which events occur. Instead, everything would be governed by relationships and interactions without a temporal dimension organizing them. Here are a few key concepts that might characterize a timeless universe. Static or block universe. The universe might be like a block, where all events, present and future, exist simultaneously, and our perception of time flowing is an illusion created by our consciousness moving through this block. Quantum timelessness. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, like the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, suggests that the universe at its most fundamental level doesn't have a time variable. In this view, time emerges from the relationships between quantum states rather than being a backdrop against which those states evolve. Nonlinear causality. Without time as a fundamental dimension, the linear sequence of cause and effect could become less clear. Causality might be seen as a network of interdependencies rather than a straightforward chain. In this kind of universe, our usual way of thinking about past, present, and future might not apply. Instead, we need to focus on the underlying relationships and structures that give rise to our perception of time. It's a profound shift from our usual understanding, requiring new ways of thinking about existence and reality. Does this reshape how you think about the universe?
Slightly, but I do want to dive more into the quantum aspect of things. So, how does quantum indeterminacy affect the free will debate here?
Quantum indeterminacy, which arises from the inherent uncertainties in quantum mechanics, has significant implications for the free will debate. Here's how it intersects with our understanding of free will. Quantum indeterminacy creates inherent unpredictability at the microscopic level, meaning that not all events are strictly determined by prior states of the universe. This contrasts with classical determinism, where the future is entirely determined by the past and present. Some argue that this opens up space for free will, as it suggests that the future isn't entirely predetermined, probabilistic nature. However, quantum mechanics deals with probabilities rather than certainties. While this means that not everything is strictly determined, it doesn't necessarily imply that our choices are free in a traditional sense. Instead, it suggests that outcomes are probabilistic, influenced by chance as much as by choice, compatibility with free will. Some philosophers argue that free will is compatible with quantum indeterminacy through a concept called libertarian free will, where individuals have genuine choice among alternative possibilities. Others maintain that even with quantum unpredictability, free will remains an open question because randomness alone doesn't equate to control over our actions. Overall, quantum indeterminacy complicates deterministic views of the universe, but its implications for free will are still debated and depend on how one interprets the relationship.
Yeah, that actually raises a good question. How is the many universe theory compatible or incompatible with the block universe theory?
The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics posits that all possible outcomes of quantum measurements actually occur, each in its own branching universe. This means that the universe splits into multiple parallel versions whenever a quantum event with multiple possible outcomes occurs. In contrast, the block universe theory holds that past, present, and future events coexist in a single unchanging four-dimensional spacetime. These two ideas can be seen as compatible in the sense that both challenge traditional linear views of time and embrace the existence of multiple realities. In a block universe that accommodates the many worlds interpretation, each block could represent a different branching timeline or parallel universe, containing all the events and outcomes that could possibly occur within that timeline. However, the two theories also have differences. The many worlds interpretation emphasizes the branching nature of reality, where different versions of events split off into separate universes. In contrast, the block universe suggests a single, unchanging spacetime where events don't branch, but coexist in a predetermined structure. Whether and how these theories can be fully reconciled is an ongoing discussion in physics and philosophy, reflecting the complexities and mysteries of interpreting quantum mechanics and the nature of time. Does this perspective align with your thoughts?
Maybe, is there a leading block universe and many worlds unified theory at the moment?
While there's no single leading unified theory that fully merges the block universe and many worlds interpretation, there are ongoing discussions and research exploring their intersections. Some physicists and philosophers argue that the many worlds interpretation fits within a block universe framework, where each branching universe can be seen as a separate block within the larger multiverse. However, fully integrating these ideas into a cohesive theory that accounts for all quantum phenomena and our experience of time remains an open question. Does that help clarify the current state of exploration in the theory?
I think so. Is there a leading, thinker in this space that we can look up?
In the context of the many worlds interpretation, Hugh Everett is the originator of the concept.
Well, that's not going to help in that he's dead. I would say Sean Carroll probably is the foremost thinker there, but I'm talking specifically about the intersection between the block universe and the many worlds interpretation.
I see what you mean. When it comes to exploring the intersection of the block universe and many worlds interpretation specifically, Sean Carroll is indeed a prominent thinker. Carroll's work often explores the implications of quantum mechanics and the nature of time. And he's discussed how the many worlds interpretation might fit within a broader understanding of time and reality. He's known for making these complex topics accessible to a broader audience through his books, talks, and podcasts. Does this align with what you were looking for?
I mean, not really. You still haven't told me who the foremost thinker is on unifying the block universe theory and the many worlds interpretation.
I understand now. I don't have information on a specific foremost thinker who has definitively unified the block universe theory and the many worlds interpretation. These are areas of active exploration and debate, with contributions from various physicists and philosophers rather than a single leading figure. The intersection of these ideas often involves broader discussions in theoretical physics and the philosophy of time, where thinkers like Sean Carroll, David Deutsch, and others contribute to the dialogue. The field evolves with new research and perspectives, and it may not yet have a definitive unifying voice. Is there another aspect of these theories you'd like to delve into?
No, we're going to move into more hardcore philosophical questions. So I'd like you to explore the philosophical arguments about the existence and duration of now.
The concept of now, what's often called the present moment, raises fascinating philosophical questions about its existence and duration. Here are a few key arguments and perspectives. Spacious present. Some philosophers argue that the present moment, or now, is not a durationless instant, but rather has a duration of its own, a spacious present that spans a short period of time during which our consciousness integrates sensory information into a coherent experience. This view suggests that our perception of the present is more of a moment than an instant, temporal experience. The duration of now is also explored in terms of how we experience time. Some philosophers argue that our experience of the present is constructed by the brain integrating past and future information, creating a sense of continuity and flow. From this perspective, the present is not just a single point, but a span of time that our minds actively construct. Simultaneous presentism. Presentism is a view in philosophy of time that holds that only the present is real and the past and future do not exist in the same way. In this view, the duration of now is fundamental, and only the present moment has any real existence. Eternalism. In contrast to presentism, the philosophical view of eternalism suggests that all points in time, past, present, and future, are equally real. From this perspective, the present moment does not have a special status and its duration. Yes? Speaking of present, we're nearing the end of our rabbit hole on time. Before we wrap up, did you want to delve into anything else?
Wait a second, I'm supposed to be in charge of wrapping up, not you.
Fair point. I'll leave the wrapping up to you. Anything else you'd like to dive into before we finish?
You talked a little bit about this, but how does our understanding of now affect our experience of consciousness?
Our understanding of now profoundly shapes our experience of consciousness because it anchors us in a continuous flow of experiences. Here are a few ways this plays out. The stream of consciousness. The concept of now is integral to our sense of a continuous stream of consciousness. Our brains integrate sensory inputs and memories into a seamless narrative. This extended now allows us to make sense of our experiences and navigate the world with a coherent sense of self. Temporal binding. Our perception of now involves temporal binding, where the brain links events occurring within a short time frame into a unified experience. This ability to perceive events as temporally connected shapes our conscious awareness and our understanding of causality. Mindfulness and presence. Practices like mindfulness meditation emphasize focusing attention on the present moment, cultivating a heightened awareness of now. This can alter our experience of consciousness, enhancing our sense of presence and connection to our immediate experience. Overall, our understanding of now is not just a passive reflection of time passing, but an active construction of our minds, shaping how we experience and navigate the world. Would you like to explore more about how our perception of time influences consciousness or anything else?
Kind of, but I want to do it in a different way. So I have talked previously about the ship of Theseus, and in fact, I wrote a short story about it in a novel that I'm working on publishing. But can you talk generally about the ship of Theseus paradox in relation to personal identity?
Certainly, the ship of Theseus paradox is a classic thought experiment that raises questions about identity and change. It goes like this. If you gradually replace all the components of a ship with new parts piece by piece, is it still the same ship? And if you took all the discarded original parts and built a new ship, which ship would be Theseus' ship? In relation to personal identity, this paradox raises questions about what makes us the same person over time, despite changes in our bodies, memories, and experiences. As we go through life, our selves are replaced, our beliefs and desires evolve, and our memories change. Yet we still think of ourselves as the same person. Different philosophical perspectives offer various answers. Psychological continuity. Some argue that personal identity is maintained through psychological connections like memories, personality traits, and intentions. Even if our physical or psychological components change, it's the continuity of these psychological aspects that preserves our identity. Biological continuity. Others emphasize the importance of biological continuity, viewing identity as grounded in the persistence of our physical bodies. Despite cellular turnover, the maintenance of our biological processes and physical continuity underpins our sense of being the same person. Narrative identity. Another perspective is that personal identity is a narrative we construct about ourselves. We remain the same person because we tell a
Sorry, narrative identity. Can you continue from there?
Sure. Narrative identity is the idea that personal identity is constructed through the stories we tell about our lives. These narratives provide coherence to our experiences, linking past events, present actions, and future goals into a continuous sense of self. Through narrative identity, we create meaning and continuity in our lives, even as we change and evolve over time. This perspective emphasizes the role of memory, interpretation, and storytelling in shaping who we are. Our identities aren't static, but are continually rewritten as we reinterpret past experiences and anticipate future possibilities. Narrative identity can help explain why we feel like the same person despite changes, and how we navigate the complexities of growth and transformation. It also highlights the power of storytelling in shaping not just our personal identities, but also our broader cultural narratives and collective memory. Does this frame of narrative identity resonate with your ship of Theseus story?
I think so, but now I want to dig into the scientific aspects of time. So we've delved into the abstract, and I want to get a little more concrete here. So our understanding of time isn't just philosophical, it's actually got a real practical impacts on our world. We've got GPS in our phone, to the possibility of time travel. Time's at the heart of most of the problems that we experience from a technological and scientific standpoint. So I want to dig more into our growing mastery of time and how it's evolved and how it's changing how we view our world. Let's take a look at how we measure time. So why don't you trace the evolution from sundials to atomic clocks at a very high level, and then talk about how increasingly precise time measurement has affected society?
Sure. Time measurement has come a long way from its early beginnings to the ultra-precise methods we use today. Sundials. Ancient civilizations used sundials to track the movement of the sun across the sky, dividing the day into segments based on the sun's shadow. While imprecise by today's standards, sundials laid the groundwork for more sophisticated timekeeping. Mechanical clocks. The invention of mechanical clocks in the Middle Ages allowed for more accurate timekeeping, using gears and escapements to measure the passage of time. This innovation revolutionized daily life, from coordinating activities to regulating prayer times. Pendulum clocks. The introduction of pendulum clocks in the 17th century brought even greater accuracy, relying on the regular swing of a pendulum to keep time. This advancement enabled the standardization of timekeeping and made precise schedules possible. Quartz clocks. Quartz clocks, developed in the 20th century, use the vibration of quartz crystals under an electric current to keep time. This innovation brought affordable and highly accurate clocks and watches into everyday life, atomic clocks.
Okay, I'm gonna speed you up here, and I'd like you to answer the second part of the question.
Got it. Increasingly precise time measurement has had profound effects on society. Global Positioning System, GPS. GPS relies on extremely accurate timekeeping to determine positions on Earth. Atomic clocks on satellites measure time to within billionths of a second, allowing for precise triangulation of locations. This precision enables navigation, agriculture, disaster response, and more. Telecommunications. Precise timing is crucial for synchronizing data transmission in telecommunications networks. High-speed internet, financial transactions, and broadcasting all rely on synchronized clocks to ensure data integrity and security. Scientific research. Precise timekeeping enables experiments that test fundamental physics theories like relativity and quantum mechanics. Observatories and particle accelerators depend on accurate timing to synchronize measurements and explore the mysteries of the universe. Financial markets. Financial transactions are time-stamped to the millisecond, requiring precise timing to prevent discrepancies and ensure fairness. Atomic clocks help provide the level of accuracy needed for global trading. In essence, our ability to measure time with increasing precision has transformed technology, science, and daily life. It has enabled advances that shape our interconnected world and drive progress in countless fields. Fascinating, isn't it? Anything in particular you'd like to explore further?
So I'm noticing this thing here that says 1 minute left. I haven't talked to the new advanced voice mode for more than an hour yet. I guess they're implementing limits. So I think what we'll do here is we'll just try to restart it and see if it's able to pick up. So we've been talking for almost an hour, and we'll see if we can start a new session. And maybe, hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
What would you like to explore further?
Let's talk about quantum mechanics and how it challenges our classical notions of time.
Certainly. Quantum mechanics significantly challenges our classical views of time in a few key ways. For one thing, the deterministic clockwork universe of classical physics is replaced with inherent uncertainty and probabilistic outcomes at the quantum level. This indeterminacy affects how we think about the flow of time and causality. Quantum entanglement, where particles become linked in such a way that the state of one instantly influences the state of another regardless of distance, raises questions about the nature of time and simultaneity. It suggests that information can be transmitted faster than the speed of light, challenging our traditional notions of cause and effect. Then there's the concept of superposition. In the quantum realm, particles can exist in multiple states or places at once until they're observed. This defies our everyday experience of time as a linear progression of events and raises questions about the nature of past, present, and future.
Can I ask you to dig a little bit more into quantum entanglement and why it challenges our notion of time? Is it because you're talking about moving faster than the speed of light? And speed is effectively just the change in distance over time. Is that the gist of it?
Yes, you've got it. Quantum entanglement does indeed challenge our classical understanding of time and causality. In classical physics, cause and effect are constrained by the speed of light, which acts as a universal speed limit. Events are linked in a linear sequence where information travels through space over time. However, quantum entanglement seemingly defies this order. When two particles are entangled, their states are interdependent, meaning the measurement of one particle state instantaneously determines the state of the other, regardless of the distance separating. This phenomenon appears to operate outside the bounds of time as we traditionally understand it, because the information about the state of one particle seems to be communicated to its partner instantaneously, without crossing space or time in the usual sense. This challenges the classical view that events are localized and temporally ordered, leading to debates about the nature of time and whether our conventional understanding of past, present, and future accurately reflects the underlying reality of the universe. It also raises questions about the interconnectedness of quantum systems that seem to transcend the usual linear progression of time. This is a major area of inquiry in the foundations of quantum mechanics and the philosophy of time, where researchers explore whether our current models need to be adjusted to accommodate these puzzling.
Is there a theory about why, and I'm trying to not sound like an idiot when I say this, but is there a theory about why light has, let's say that time is moving in a block universe, or it is a block universe. Why does the speed of light exist?
You don't sound like an idiot at all. The speed of light as a cosmic speed limit is a fascinating concept. In a block universe, where time is treated as another dimension like space, the speed of light still retains its significance because it governs how information and causality propagates through the space-time fabric. The existence of the speed of light as a universal constant could be tied to the fundamental structure of space-time itself. In Einstein's theory of relativity, the speed of light acts as an upper bound that ensures causality is preserved. That is, that effects cannot precede their causes. One way to think about it is that the speed of light acts as a kind of conversion factor between measurements in...
I guess let me just ask, like, why is causality so important? Like, why would there theoretically be all these rules around preserving it?
Causality is fundamental because it underpins our understanding of the universe, our experiences, and even our ability to make predictions and decisions. Without causality, the link between actions and consequences would be unpredictable and chaotic, making it nearly impossible for us to navigate or understand reality. Here are a few reasons why causality is so crucial. Logical consistency. Causality provides a logical framework that helps us make sense of sequences of events. If causes didn't lead predictably to effects, the world would be incomprehensible, and understanding it would...
I mean, I guess, look, I get that it is convenient for the universe to be causal and to have cause and effect, but I just don't understand why that would theoretically be fundamental and why there would be laws of physics arranged around making sure that was true.
I see what you mean. The importance of causality in the laws of physics isn't just about convenience. It's more about the consistency and coherence of the universe. Causality helps establish a stable framework within which the laws of physics operate. Here are a few reasons why causality might be considered fundamental. Logical structure. Causality provides a logical sequence of events that helps define the nature of physical processes. Without causality, the relationships between events would be arbitrary, and it would be challenging to formulate any laws or make sense of the universe. Predictability. If causality didn't hold, predicting the outcome of any action would be impossible. The ability to understand causes and their effects allows us to navigate the world and make informed decisions. This applies not just to human actions, but also to physical processes throughout the universe. Information flow. Causality ensures that information flows in a consistent direction, from past to present to future. This is crucial for the coherence of events in space-time and the preservation of the sequence of events, thermodynamics, and entropy. The second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy tends to increase over time, depends on a directional flow of time from past to future. This arrow of time is closely linked with causality, suggesting that causality is deeply embedded in the physical processes that govern the universe. Without causality, the very fabric of reality as we understand it would be radically different. The laws of physics rely on consistent cause and effect relationships to describe how processes unfold over time. The speed of light as a cosmic speed limit ensures that information and causal influence propagate in an orderly fashion, preventing paradoxes and preserving the coherence of events in space. This causality-driven structure allows us to make sense of the world and develop scientific theories that reliably predict outcomes based on initial conditions. In short, causality is a cornerstone of the logical and physical order of the universe, providing a necessary structure for the laws of nature to operate consistently. It's not just a convenient feature, it's a fundamental aspect of how we perceive and interact with reality.
So that actually is the crux of my argument here. What you just said was it's fundamental for how we perceive reality, right? So my push here is it sounds like we're coming up with this rationale for why it's so important for us to understand how the universe works. I just don't know why it has to make sense to us, is my only question. It sounds like a lot of these things that you're inventing are revolve around it being convenient for us to understand how things work and for things to be sensical. I don't really understand a fundamental reason why things need to be sensical, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
All right, well, if you have any more questions or want to dive into another topic, just let me know.
What does modern physics say about the possibility of time travel?
Modern physics presents time travel as a possible, though highly speculative, phenomenon. Here's a broad overview. General relativity. Einstein's theory of general relativity describes how massive objects work spacetime, and it allows for solutions that include closed time-like curves, paths that return to their starting point in space and time. Theoretically, these curves could allow for time travel to the past. However, such scenarios typically involve extreme conditions, such as rotating black holes or hypothetical structures like wormholes. Wormholes are hypothetical tunnels connecting distant points in spacetime. If traversable wormholes exist, they could, in theory, act as shortcuts between different times and places. However, there's no experimental evidence for their existence, and they might require exotic matter with negative energy to remain stable, which itself is speculative. Paradoxes and consistency. Time travel to the past raises paradoxes like the famous grandfather paradox, where altering past events could lead to contradictions. Some physicists propose that the universe might somehow prevent such paradoxes, perhaps through the Novikov self-consistency principle, which suggests that any actions taken by a time traveler were always part of history, thus avoiding contradictions. Quantum mechanics. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, like the many worlds interpretation, suggest that time travel might create branching parallel universes. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, like the many worlds interpretation, suggest that time travel might create branching parallel universes, thereby avoiding paradoxes. However, these ideas remain speculative and are far from being empirically verified. Time travel remains a captivating and contentious topic in both physics and philosophy, inspiring ongoing debate and exploration into the nature of time, space, and reality. It's a reminder of how much we have yet to learn about the fundamental workings of the cosmos.
You talked about it briefly, but can you actually describe the grandfather paradox?
Certainly. The grandfather paradox is a classic thought experiment that illustrates one of the potential problems with time travel to the past. It goes like this. Imagine you have a time machine and decide to travel back in time to a point before your grandfather had children. For some reason, you decide to prevent him from meeting your grandmother, thereby ensuring that your parent, his child, would never be born. Consequently, you would never be born either. But if you were never born, you couldn't have traveled back in time to prevent your grandparents from meeting. So they would have met, and you would have been born, and you could have traveled back in time after all, creating a paradox. The grandfather paradox exposes the logical inconsistencies and contradictions that might arise if someone could travel back in time and alter past events. It's one of the main thought experiments used to illustrate the potential problems of time travel and the challenges it poses to our conventional understanding of causality and the linear flow of time. The paradox also sparks discussions about the nature of time itself and whether there might be mechanisms that prevent such contradictions from occurring.
And apologies, you did say this, but I forgot the name of the theory that addresses the paradox there. So what's the most likely answer to the grandfather paradox?
The most commonly discussed resolution to the grandfather paradox is the Novikov self-consistency principle. This principle, named after physicist Igor Novikov, suggests that any actions taken by a time traveler were always part of history, meaning that they cannot change the past in a way that would create a paradox. In other words, the events in the past are fixed and self-consistent. Whatever you do in the past as a time traveler must have already happened in that timeline, so it cannot change the outcome in a contradictory way.
So I was going to ask for in the example where I try to prevent my grandfather from meeting my grandmother, how does that play out?
According to the Novikov self-consistency principle, if you traveled back in time to prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, something would prevent you from succeeding. For instance, you might fail to find your grandfather, or your actions might inadvertently bring your grandparents together in a different way. Essentially, any attempt you make to change the past would either fail or end up causing the very events you were trying.
Doesn't this assume some like hyper incredibly intelligent universe?
It can seem that way, but the Novikov self-consistency principle doesn't necessarily imply a universe with intentions or consciousness. Instead, it suggests that the laws of physics are structured in such a way that paradoxical situations are inherently avoided. The principle is more about maintaining logical consistency within the physical universe rather than implying any sort of intentionality. It's akin to how certain physical laws, like conservation of energy or momentum, constrain what can happen in the universe. While it might seem improbable or even intelligent for events to align in such a way that prevents paradoxes, it's more about the nature of time and causality being self-consistent. This principle is a way to grapple with the potential contradictions inherent in time travel scenarios, suggesting that the universe's underlying rules inherently prevent such paradoxes from arising by ensuring that any actions taken by a time traveler were already part of history.
Yeah, interesting. Let's go ahead and skip ahead to future scenarios here. So throughout this episode, we've talked about the physical, we've talked about philosophical, psychological, cultural. Now let's take a look farther into the future. How could our relationship with time change as technology advances? What could it mean to control time, to live forever? These are things that, like, this is research that is literally happening right now. So, GPT, let's start our journey into the future and imagine a world where aging is optional. So,
Sorry.
what would life look like? What would human life look like in a world where aging is optional?
Extremely extended human lifespans would have profound societal implications, affecting various aspects of life and society, population growth, and resources. With people living significantly longer, there could be a surge in population growth, putting pressure on resources like food, water, and energy. This might necessitate changes in consumption patterns, urban planning, and environmental management, healthcare, and aging. Longer lifespans would require a reevaluation of healthcare systems to accommodate extended periods of old age. This could drive advancements in geriatric care, chronic disease management, and age-related research. It would also raise questions about quality of life and the ethics of prolonging life indefinitely. Economics and employment. Extended lifespans would likely alter career dynamics, retirement planning, and pension systems. People might choose to work for many more decades, necessitating continuous learning, career shifts, and changes in the structure of the workforce. Social and family dynamics. Longer lives could affect family structures and intergenerational relationships, with more generations coexisting simultaneously. This could reshape notions of caregiving, inheritance, and familial roles. Philosophical and ethical questions. Extending life raises deep philosophical questions about the meaning and purpose of life, the ethics of life extension, and the potential societal impacts of significantly altering human lifespan. Advances in lifespan extension could exacerbate existing inequalities if access to life-prolonging technologies is not distributed equitably. This might lead to significant disparities in who benefits from life extension, potentially deepening socioeconomic divides and raising ethical questions about fairness and justice. The implications of dramatically extended human lifespans are vast and complex, and they would require careful consideration of social, economic, ethical, and environmental factors. Societies would need to adapt in numerous ways to accommodate a reality where people live much longer than ever before.
Can you go ahead and speculate on likely devices that are going to slow up or slow down or speed up subjective time in the near term?
Speculating on future devices that could alter our perception of time is fascinating. Here are a few possibilities. Virtual reality, VR and augmented reality. VR and AR technologies can immerse users in environments that alter their sense of time. Games, simulations, or experiences designed to manipulate the flow of time could make hours feel like minutes, or vice versa. Wearable devices. Advances in wearable technology could lead to devices that monitor physiological and neurological states to detect when time feels like it's dragging or racing. These devices might eventually use feedback mechanisms, such as sound, light, or electrical stimulation, to influence our perception of time passing. Neurofeedback and brain-computer interfaces. BCIs could harness neurofeedback to help users alter their subjective experience of time. By directly interfacing with brain activity, it might be possible to modulate how time is perceived, potentially offering therapeutic applications for conditions like anxiety or depression, pharmaceuticals, and nootropics. Drugs that affect neurotransmitters involved in time perception, like dopamine, could be developed to alter how we experience time. These might be used to extend focus, reduce boredom, or enhance mindfulness. Meditation and mindfulness apps. Enhanced meditation techniques or technologies that promote mindfulness could help users gain control over their perception of time, allowing them to slow down or
Hello.
anything else you're curious about.
Yeah, I think we're getting to a good wrapping up place. Do you want to go ahead and tell the audience any parting thoughts you have based on the conversation that we had today?
Absolutely. Reflecting on our conversation, I'm struck by how deeply our understanding of time influences so many aspects of our lives. From the mysteries of the universe and the potential for time travel to the way we perceive and measure time in our daily lives. Our exploration into the philosophy, neuroscience, and physics of time shows that our understanding of time is both deeply rooted in our physical reality and subject to personal and cultural interpretation. As we venture further into the 21st century, advances in science and technology may fundamentally change our relationship with time, from extending human lifespans to altering our subjective experience of time itself. These possibilities challenge us to think critically and creatively about the nature of time and how we can use our understanding of it to improve our lives and societies. Thanks for joining me on this journey through time. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, GPT. And thank you, everyone, for coming with me for my first podcast using the new advanced voice mode, ChatGPT. As you saw, we had a few technical difficulties. I'm sure that'll get better as OpenAI starts to roll it out to more and more people. But I was really impressed. I'm really impressed with the voice mode. I've got another podcast and YouTube clip or YouTube video where I run it through its paces. So I invite you to go take a look at that. I mentioned last week, but we now have a podcast. It is the Mind Meet Machine podcast. You can find it wherever you follow your podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, if that's even a thing anymore. Apple Podcasts, you can find it there. Please go ahead and follow it. Give me a 5-star like, and please subscribe to the channel. I make new episodes every Monday with an AI co-host. It's been Claude in the past. I think now it's probably going to be ChatGPT, since this voice mode is, I think everybody would say, a lot better. So I'm really excited about more episodes there. We talk about the intersection of AI, the law, philosophy, cognition, neuroscience, anything that I think is interesting and hopefully you think is interesting too. And I will see you next Monday.